Thanks very much for the intro. I'm going to preface this with I've done many things in my career, but I'm not a quantum physicist. But it is my pleasure to represent Kuano and the very talented folks behind the technology platform at Kuano. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to what is there beyond AI, in particular taking a quantum physics-based approach. So Kuano is a biotech. We are developing drugs, but it's all based on our proprietary platform. Hopefully the clicker works. Okay, so just to set the scene a little bit, I'm talking about AI in drug design here. We know that AI is everywhere in the therapeutics industry, but we also see it everywhere in the design processes as well, from the modeling and simulations that we do, through to structure and ligand-based design, and protein and property prediction. But whether you're designing new molecules, optimizing molecules, or going beyond, it's pretty much all built on classical physics. So it's the classical physics that's underpinning almost everything that we're doing in this space and almost all the AI that we have. But what if we could see the world differently? And what do I mean by classical physics? What's the alternative? So I'm talking about going from, if the clicker will work, classical physics to quantum physics. So we are used to working with a very deterministic way of thinking, where you can get a precise answer. This is definitely a thing, and it's definitely here, definitely at this point in space. And so it's binary. It's a yes, no. Objects exist in a defined state, in a defined place, and the sorts of theories you'll be familiar with there are Newtonian physics and the rules of thermodynamics. It's now thought to be quite a simplistic view of the world and how everything from space to nuclear physics works, but it's very useful, it's very scalable, and we do a lot of very sophisticated things with it. But a more advanced way of thinking about how the world works is through quantum theory. And quantum theory says, actually, it might be a thing, and it might be here, but it might not be. It's all about the possibility and the probability that that possibility is happening. It also says that particles can be correlated, things can be related to each other, even if they're far apart. We think of a bond as a fixed length. We might think of it stretching, but think of it being infinitely long and the probability that that might be infinitely long. You're then calculating, actually, something over here might be related to something over there. And the sorts of theories we get are things like wave-particle duality and entanglement. So things that say things aren't always what they seem. It's a very sophisticated view. It enables you to see a lot of things you can't see with classical physics. But when you're going from a yes-no answer into a spectrum of probability, then you're dealing with a ridiculous amount of data. And it's been thought that we're going to need a computer that thinks in this non-binary way and is built in this non-binary way in order to be able to manage this and do this type of computation. So that's quantum computers. Now, Kuano is not a quantum computing company. We don't need the quantum hardware. We use digital computers that we're familiar with, along with the infrastructure that comes with it, with GPUs and cloud computing. And on that, you have conventional algorithms. But what you can also generate, if you know how, are quantum-inspired algorithms. Algorithms that are based on quantum physics, but that can run on conventional computers. They can be predictive, as they're more kind of holistic in nature, higher accuracy, and crucially can see the possibilities about the world and drug-target interactions that are invisible to conventional methods. This is very difficult to do because of the amount of data, and it's a totally different way of thinking. But the quantum-based drug design that Kuano's put in place, we can do this, and we can do it without the need for the quantum hardware. But it touches on it. The quantum hardware isn't ready yet for this kind of purpose. With our platform, we're able to explore completely new chemical space. And by that means, we have unbounded imagination. We're not bounded by the sorts of chemistry we're familiar with seeing in databases of what's synthetically tractable. We're not bound by the need for wet lab training data. We're able to see nuances with targets that we can design greater selectivity and potency to our molecules. We can unlock targets which you simply can't look at with conventional in silico means, or are very difficult to do in the lab. And we can predict reactivity, and we can rapidly scale across target classes and beyond. So just to put it into perspective, because some of you here may know a little bit about this space and the computational chemistry space, arguably probably more than I do, but just to say, we're used to this sort of classical computational chemistry approach which looks at atom levels interaction. This is, atoms are a blob and they're here in space and there's a bond and it's fixed and things can kind of move within those constraints. That's great, and there are some very sophisticated things going on in this space, but there are things that are omitted, like electron dynamics, and so it can be inaccurate for really complex systems. There's a next generation that's coming through now, using actually quantum legacy methods, but new in terms of the technologies, things that Schrodinger's doing, XDELPi, QCware. They're beginning to use quantum. They're beginning to acknowledge that things aren't blobs in a fixed point in space. And they're using things like density functional theory, which is quantum physics, but it's simplified. It still has to break things down, break that interrelationship down into parts, albeit now fuzzy parts. So you can do more things with it, but it's still a very heavy approximation. You've broken that mathematical wave function that says that everything could be connected. And so it has limited relevancy. It's being used for quite discrete purposes. Then there's the advanced quantum methods, those that actually maintain the true quantum nature. These maintain that true wave function in terms of the maths. You can do very sophisticated approximations, which will enable you to include this entanglement, this key feature, and therefore be able to look at really complex systems, such as transition states, transition metals, and bigger systems. But the data's huge, and it's very difficult to do, and the computational superpower that you would need to do it is extraordinary, so it's been considered far too costly. But Kuano's unique combination of different technologies and deep expertise has put together a set of tricks, which means we make this possible, and we use advanced quantum methods beyond the DFT and others. We're making it cost-effective and scalable, so it's actually accessible in a relevant, meaningful way for drug discovery. So how do we do it? You know, we're a small company, but we're a small company that's doing something really big. We've got a big message to say. So what's underneath the bonnet? Several key things. First of all, the right maths, the right measures of entanglement, the right metrics, combined with an automated orbital selection process. That is how we pick and choose, with the assistance of AI, how we pick and choose those interrelationships that are most pertinent. Basically, how we focus on where quantum matters so that we can actually take this huge amount of data, manage it, make it scalable. Scalable to big systems like proteins, scalable then across multiple target classes. And we have various representations that show us those levels of complexity and where we need the quantum. We use tensor networks. That's a very specialist technique that essentially translates things from binary speak translates things from a kind of interrelated matrix into a hierarchy that can be coded in binary. The trick here is being able to deploy that in a way that maintains the accuracy. Like if you unzip a zip file, you need to make sure you've zipped it properly so you maintain the accuracy. And we have the data to show that compared to others that have tried, some big players, our result is far more accurate. And then finally, being able to integrate that decision-making process. Things like synthetic tractability, multi-parameter optimization, that's integrated with our platform. And this is what it looks like. We have a quantum simulation of a target protein. We develop a transition state template, or a template of what we're interested in. And from that, we generate a quantum pharmacophore. Now, this is blended with AI. This is where the target and ligand become as one in a quantum way of coding it with AI underneath to help postulate putative chemical matter. And then we have this AI design engine, which then translates that through into chemical matter. So we are using AI, but the whole foundation on which we are applying AI is a totally different way of seeing the world. So, for instance, we looked at phosphatases. We looked at the amino acids that are important for binding and selectivity. This is actually two very closely related phosphatases, SHP1 and SHP2. Typically, you would look at a distance-based analysis of proximity to certain residues, and you'd only look at negative forces. So it's quite a one-sided way of looking at things. And for things that are structurally very similar, sometimes that doesn't help you find those determinants of binding. So it's almost a black and white answer. What we have is we're able to look at both attractive and repulsive forces. We're able to break this down into the different energies. It's quantitative, and we can look beyond the active site. So when we look at the residues that might be involved, we're now seeing a much more colourful picture. We can actually see those nuances and therefore design things that are more potent, more selective, or overcome other problems. And we're doing this. We're doing this predominantly with enzymes, where you need to understand the catalysis. There are thousands of therapeutically attractive enzyme targets out there that have no effective drugs against them. They're either thwarted by what you can do in silico or in the wet lab. So we're working on select target classes at the moment. We're going far beyond, but we've focused on proteases, methyltransferases, phosphatases, and we're able to unlock those key challenges with those proteins. We are able to scale very quickly. As our CEO will say, once we've done one, we can do another target in 2 weeks, what would take a PhD student their entire project. And of course, then across to other target classes, we're bringing in other target classes to our pipeline as we grow. And to give you some examples of the important targets that we've been able to unlock with this method, our quantum simulation platform revealed an oxyanion hole in a first-in-class carboxylase target. This is a novel target, highly implicated in colorectal cancer. And because we're able to find the right compounds for the right reasons, needing less than 100 compounds synthesized, we're able to find something that had very good in vitro activity and in vivo proof of concept for colorectal cancer. We looked at an important, well-known epigenetic target, where our quantum lens revealed a unique pharmacophore that showed us distinct chemotypes that broke away from the non-selective, toxic therapeutic agents that are in the clinic at the moment. So we did this in one go through the platform, less than 50 compounds synthesized to crack that problem. We also were able to look at a challenging metalloprotease. Metalloproteases, very difficult to model in silico. Metal ions are just clouds of electrons. And they're also prone to having non-selective binding motifs come through in wet lab methods as well. And we were able to look at this, and we were able to very quickly get developable transition state inhibitors to difficult metalloprotease. And going back to where we started, this is actually in a very rudimentary form of our platform a few years ago. We were actually able to recapitulate transition state inhibitors in about 2 months with the former version of our platform that had taken a group in Japan over 5 years to find. This really shows you the sorts of problems we can unlock and the sort of speed and efficiency that we can do that with. So where next? Well, internally, we are continuing to expand our pipeline into different areas, both in terms of the drugs that we're developing, but also extending our technology. We're working in the covalent reactivity space now. We have good proof of concept to show that we can predict that in a holistic fashion, how your warheads may interact with what amino acids. Of course, this is a transformative technology. This is a totally different way of using AI on a totally different type of data. So, we've got a universal tool set here. We can build this out over time, thinking about the potential to work on peptide design, protein-protein interactions, allosterics, maybe even biologics. I'm talking far ahead. And then blue sky, why should this world of quantum theory underpinning how we see and do different things in silico, why should that stay to therapeutics? Right, there are plenty of applications beyond, such as protein engineering, enzyme engineering, for instance. Where next for us? The scalability. We've already got this foundation, this knowledge base around each target, the platform that we have with the knobs and dials that we can set up, and we can rapidly deploy this across multiple target classes and targets. And with time, we will be expanding the current parallel capability that we have to make sure that we can exponentially scale, and so that we are rapidly and efficiently de-risking programs, doing tractability analyses, and most importantly, coming up with very good drugs that have a greater chance of success. And not forgetting, of course, that there is the quantum hardware coming through. We're not working on it ourselves, but many people are working on the quantum computers. And when the hardware comes through as well, actually that will make our lives easier. We actually remove a component of our platform and it will run on a quantum computer. And then the power of those computers, you'll be able to turbocharge what we can do at Kuano, and then we can do more and more and more with that. So that's Kuano in a nutshell. As I say, this is thanks to our team of experts. All the tricks that we do, they're there because we have this deep expertise Everything we do at Kuano has been built around this quantum mechanics core. This is not a retrofit. This is all about how we get the quantum to work accurately and properly to best effect for drug discovery. These are the super clever people behind it. And if you want to find out more, then we're quite easy to find, and feel free to drop us a line.